Hi, my name is Nisha. I work with the product team, specifically on voice services. And today, Torkel, who also works on the product or voice team, specifically on conference, we're going to talk to you about the conference API. So let's just do a quick poll before we get started. How many people have built something on Twilio? Wow, okay, great, awesome. How many people have used Twilio Conference? Cool. And how many people just generally have a need to connect multiple people in multiple regions around the world? Okay, great. So this talk is for you. We want to talk to you today about the Twilio Conference API, how it can work for you, and how we built the conference infrastructure from the ground up with global scale in mind. So you'll see this similar slide on every session at Signal. We want to get your feedback. Please text the 4 characters at T16 to the short code 39242. You'll see this at the end of this talk again, so don't worry about writing it down. And we really look forward to your feedback. So I imagine everyone here has been in a conference call. They're pretty common these days. Even the president has to hop on a conference call every now and then. Can I get a show of hands of who has never been in a conference call? Right. So what we want to talk to you today is not just about making a simple conference calling app, which has its purpose, but after this session, we hope you'll walk away with ideas of how to enhance every workflow you have with Twilio's rich global conference API. And we want you to think of the possibilities when conference is integrated as part of the workflow, not just a dial-up number that's adjacent to it. So let's step back. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Your team and your customers are growing. You're adding multiple offices around the world. The people that you and your team and your customers interact with can change constantly. For example, we've seen this at Twilio. Our team has grown significantly. We started in San Francisco. We added New York, Mountain View, London, Tallinn, and recently Bogota. And along the way, we've had to ask, how do we create that simple, seamless, one-on-one experience whenever we collaborate with our team or interact with our customers? And this is a challenge for anyone who's going from 5 to 50, 500, 5,000 people. And we think this is really as simple as picking up the phone. Almost everyone you work with has a phone. It can be a smartphone, a flip phone, a landline, an office phone. It's easy for people to dial a number, and it's even easier to dial out to them. A phone call can easily connect people who work across teams, organizations, and time zones. And talking to each other gives you that additional context, the emotions behind the words, those details that you miss when you're sending long chains of emails or links to Google Docs and websites. We think talking gets your team to a full understanding and consensus faster. So at Twilio, we really think that real-time communication, talking to people, can enhance every workflow for your team or your customers. So let's take a look at some of our customer applications. Zendesk uses conference to connect support agents with customers. You don't lose track of the context of the customer issue because you're talking to your customer through the same application that has their full ticket history. ClearSlide uses conference to let their sales teams actively engage with their customers when they share content. As the sales team presents on a new solution, customers can discuss the details and get answers to their questions immediately. So what other use cases can you power with conference? Why not add a talk to my team button as part of every Asana project or Jira sprint page? This is actually something that we do at Twilio on the voice team. We dial into a conference for our daily stand-ups. What if your company calendar automatically added a conference line for any meeting that you scheduled and had a one-time use pin for each participant? While taking an online course, Students could dial into a conference and collaborate in their discussion sessions, and they could record that call if they want to refer back to what happened in that session. No matter what your need is for collaboration, we really think conference can be a solution that enhances that workflow. So how does Twilio Conference work? It's really just as simple as dialing into Twilio and hosting these 5 lines of code. At its core, Twilio Conference gives you the functionality to add 2 or more participants into a room. That's not all. Twilio Conference is not just a service, it's a fully featured API that's integrated into the whole Twilio platform. We offer a global inventory of numbers, and sorry, that shouldn't be XX, but that's 41 countries. We have a 250 participant ability for every conference room. You can record on the conference or on individual call legs. You can get moderator functions like controlling when a conference room can be opened or closed. Get notifications when participants enter or leave. Mute participants if you have one speaker and everyone else should be listening. You can customize the hold music of your conference. But the best part really is how Conference gives you that local calling experience no matter where your callers are in the world. This is possible through Twilio's global low latency solution, and I'm going to hand it over to Torkel to explain how this works in detail.
All right, thanks, Nisha. So my name is Torkel. I'm a developer in the voice services team. And me, together with my fellow coworkers, some of whom are here actually, right there one, we have designed and built a brand new conferencing infrastructure from bottom up with the purpose of solving a very specific problem, which is the following. So it might seem like the internet is the same all around the world, right? No matter where you are surfing the web, you have the same experience. This is not true for real-time communication, unfortunately. There are small delays over the internet, and when you're dealing with things like voice over IP, for instance, then these small delays actually matter. Just 50 or 100 milliseconds, which sounds like nothing, actually makes a huge difference. And it will cause these awkward situations that I'm sure you all have been in when you're, for instance, talking to someone over a phone and you start talking, the other person starts talking at the same time, roughly, and then you discover that, so you stop talking, and the other person does the same, and then you have this really awkward silence for 2-3 seconds, and then you start talking again because you realize the other person is waiting for you, and then he starts and you stop, and you've all been there, right? It's really weird, really awkward, bad user experience in general. So that's a problem. For instance, if you're dialing into a conference from the moon, right, like this guy, that's gonna be horrible. That would just like you're gonna have to wait for, I don't know, I haven't done math, but like 10 minutes, an hour, I don't know what. It's just really bad user experience, right? That doesn't work at all. So that's a problem. And that's the problem that we're gonna solve, that we have solved with the new conference infrastructure. So how did we solve this? First, let's go through some basics. The core component of a conferencing solution is something we call a mixer. A mixer basically takes the audio from your phone and mixes that together. We have some graphics showing this. One more. And mixes it together with the other participants and then sends out the mixed audio out to all the participants in the conference. That's how you can hear everybody else. That's how everybody else can hear you. That's the mixer. That's the core of a conference system. So how did we solve this problem then? Well, we took a bunch of these mixers and threw them out over the world, basically. We spread them out in different regions. We have today, currently, I think we have 6 different regions where we have mixers. We do not have a mixer on the moon. Sorry about that. I'm sure we will when there's internet connectivity up there and a data center. But we have mixers in Australia, for instance, which is closer than the moon, but still pretty far. We have mixers in Brazil, Japan, Singapore, Europe, and United States, of course. So by doing this, our infrastructure can now choose a mixer based on where you are, based on where the participants are. The way we do that is by recognizing the number you're dialing, and based on that, based on what country this number belongs to, we can pick a mixer in or close to that country. By doing that, all the traffic doesn't have to go all the way to the United States and back. If you're in Japan, for instance, it will go straight through the mixer in Japan. But there is another problem that we wanted to solve as well. We also need to scale. As the call volume increases, our customer base grows, their customers grow. We need to handle lots of conferences. And the way we do this is that our infrastructure can not only pick a mixer that's close to you, but also pick a mixer which has the most capacity at the moment. And by doing that, we can just add mixers. There should have been some graphics here, but whatever. We can just add mixers, more and more mixers in the regions. That way, we can handle thousands of conferences at the same time and just go forever, basically, in theory. But there is one more problem that we also figured we'll solve while we're at it. And this is that not only do we want to support a lot of conferences, we also want to support and handle a large number of participants in each conference. So typically, most conferencing systems that I'm aware of, they typically let you have maybe 50, perhaps 100 if you're lucky, number of participants in a conference. With the Twilio API, you can have up to 250 participants in the same conference. But we're not happy with that. That's not good enough. We want more than that. We want to give you more than that. So we need a way to scale past that number. And that's why we're working on something that we call epic conferences, which essentially is a huge conference. I'm not going to give you a number, but it's basically enormous, a lot more than 250. So how do we solve that? A mixer has a max capacity. You can only have so many participants on a mixer. But the way we've done is that we can orchestrate these mixers and tell them to bridge together to form essentially a virtual mixer, which consists of a cluster of mixers, which are bridged together, handling the same conference. That way we can scale a single conference across mixers. That way we can handle a lot of conferences. And there we have the graphics. Awesome. Okay. So let's look at an example here. Here we have all the mixers in the world. The green little gear represents the rest of Twilio, essentially all the other infrastructure we have, the API, the call processing, and the TWIML, all that stuff, which is all in Virginia in the United States. If we have, for instance, 2 people dialing into a conference in Europe, one from Sweden, one from Spain, let's say. Traditionally, that traffic will go all the way to the United States and back, and then to Sweden. And that would cause this horrible delay and bad user experience and so on. So now the problem here is that, like I said, we still have all the other stuff, all the other infrastructure in the United States. We have the call processing API and all that stuff, which we still need. We want to provide all those features, but we still want to mix this conference in Europe. The challenge is, how can we separate these 2 things? We need to separate what we call the signaling from the media. The signaling basically is everything that happens when you dial the number, even before you hear the ringtone. There is a lot of stuff going on. We get requests sent back and forth. We process your application code. We choose mixers. We log things and whatnot. All that's signaling, basically. And the media, that's the audio, the actual sound that's going through the mixer. So we have separated that. That was the key problem that we needed to solve. And by doing that, the signaling now goes through the United States as normal, but the audio goes straight through the mixer in Ireland. So that's how we solved the problem. Okay, so how do you use this? How do you get started with this thing? So Twilio Conference is not a conference system itself. It's an API. It's a conference API on top of which you can build a conference system. So how do you do that? It's really easy. Basically, step number 1, buy a number, or 2, or as many as you want. Make sure, though, when you buy these numbers, make sure you get numbers in the countries where your customers are, where your participants will be. And here's an example of all the countries that we have actually a number in today, and that's growing constantly. Step number 2, create a Twilio app. I stole this slide from Nisha's beginning here just to show how extremely easy it is. It's 5 lines of code, that's all, 5 lines. And you have a full-fledged conference application. That's it. Step number 3, pick up the phone and dial, and you're in the conference. That's all. That's all there is. You should try it out. It's really, really easy. It's fun, it's easy, it's fast. Try it out. When you go home tonight, try it out. Buy a phone number and you can copy those 5 lines if you want, and you have your conference. That's all. Okay, and one last slide for me. Here, in addition to those 5 lines, you can add a few XML attributes to your 5 lines of XML code to enable all the other features that we have in a conference. Moderator functions, Nisha already went through some of these. You can record the conference. You can record an entire conference. You can record just individual participants in a conference. You can enable join and leave notifications and so on. And with that, back to Nisha. It's a little slow.
Great. Okay, so once you've built all of your conferences, we just want to point out that that data of what happened in the conference is really useful for building into your applications. And so I just want to point out some resources that can be really helpful. So we're going to start with your account portal, right? So you can log in. You'll see your Getting Started section in the voice side of the portal. And if you come over to the conferences page, you can see you can choose between basic and global conference. So I'm going to choose global conference. I get my 250 participants. And then I can start making conference calls. So here I've done a couple conference calls this morning. So I can see a full log of all of the conferences that I've created in my application. If I want to kind of dig deeper into one of those conferences, let's look at this first one. I can see all of the details about the conference that I created, when it started, when it finished, how many participants were in there, and I can see the attributes that were associated with all of the participants in that conference. So this first leg was a moderator, so we can see it was controlled. Only this conference would start when this person entered, and when this person exited, the whole conference would end. And there's some recordings here. So I've actually recorded on the conference and on the individual participant legs to get both of those experiences. So we can kind of dig a little deeper into that first participant. Here's our call details. You can see the recording that's associated with the conference. You can see exactly the TWIML that is associated with this call. And here we've recorded and used our moderator functions. And so our next participant we can look at has a recording as well. I've done this a little differently. I've actually recorded on dial, so this records on the individual participant level. And there's a lot of really great features of the API. So take a look at our REST API documentation for conferences and for participants. And really helpful tool that's also available to everyone in the portal is the API Explorer. You can actually play with the API in real time. So you can view your conference list, you can view participants, you can mute them or delete them while a conference is in progress. All right, so back to the slide. Okay. All right. So today we just gave kind of a high-level overview of conference, but we want to make sure that this is an experience that can be built into any workflow. It's a fully featured API. We've built it from the ground up for global applications. And we've done a lot of the hard work of making sure that your media is routed in the most optimal way, no matter where your participants are located, so they all have the best experience. You have several tools to configure and track and analyze your conference calls through the API or the portal. And just want to make sure that everyone signs up for the Epic conference launch. We'd love to start working with you. So feel free to head over to twilio.com/voice/conference to sign up for the beta. And definitely let us know your feedback. Our code is @T16, and we'll open it up to questions. I think there's a question up here.
Mike.
Hi. Your the cluster of mixers, does it cluster across regions, or is it limited to a region?
So yeah, that's a good question actually. So it can be both. We can cluster in a region for capacity. For the Epic conferences, we can also cluster or bridge between regions in order to have low latency, as low as possible. Those participants that are in Europe, at least they will hear each other really fast. The ones in Australia, the same. And obviously between those two regions, there will be latency. That's, we can't really do magic, but yes.
Any other questions?
One more.
One more.
So if I have a conference, not an Epic conference, but just I've got some participants in North America, some in Europe, some in Brazil. When they dial into that conference, is that going to? Am I going to have automatically have a mixer in each region, or are they going to? Are they going to be directed based on the number they're calling
Right.
from?
Yeah. So currently, it will be the majority. It's a majority selection. So when the participant is started, the most number of participants in a region, that region wins. So that's where the mixing will happen currently.
Thanks.
All right. Okay.
Any other questions?
One in the back there.
Do you guys have support for native iOS or Android type applications, or do you foresee that in the future?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat? I cannot quite hear.
Sorry. Support for building your conferencing capabilities into a native iOS or Android application? Or would I have to create like an HTML container inside my application to put that code and stuff?
Right. So you can use the client SDK to dial into conference as well, not just normal phone numbers. So that way you can join conferences through your web page, certainly. And obviously the API as well, it can be integrated with the web page. Okay.
I think that's it for questions.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Torkel. Thank you, Nisha.